What's up, guys? Welcome to a Third and Goal show hosted by Garrick Douglas with co-host Nick Johnson and Tripolitan sports writer Scott Shelton. This is the show where we go over the week's top games and tell you our picks. All right, first up on the menu, guys, we got West Virginia versus Texas Tech. West Virginia is coming in at 3.5-point favorite. What you thinking, Nick?
Well, this has the potential to be a great game. We've got a big Big 12 game, one of the first big Big 12 games we've got going on this year. West Virginia is looking like a pretty solid team so far. A lot of people are expecting big things from West Virginia with Will Greer at the QB position. He's doing good things. We'll see how that happens this weekend and what should be a shootout against Texas Tech. Scott, what you got?
It's probably going to be a shootout. Big 12 is what they call a pillow fight. But Texas Tech last week seemed to find their identity on defense because they went to Oklahoma State and won 41-17, I believe. They played a great, complete game. And now they're at home against West Virginia, who's slowly making their way up. I think number 12 in the AP poll. So this is going to be an important game for West Virginia. They're going to, if they win this game, start whispering about college football playoff hopes.
I'm personally really looking forward to this game. West Virginia has become like one of my favorite teams to watch this year, especially led by Will Greer. I think it's night and day from when he was at Florida. I mean, they did have a terrible coach at Florida, but when he transferred to West Virginia, I think he's gotten way better being in that system and being in the Big 12 against less defenses or worse defenses. But I'm taking West Virginia in this game. I do think Texas Tech will cover, but I'm taking West Virginia in this game.
Yeah, I expect Texas Tech's defense to keep this one close, but I think West Virginia is going to be able to get it done. I got West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia somehow is only a 3.5-point favorite, but I'll take West Virginia to cover and to win this game.
All right. Up next, we got Florida versus Mississippi State. And Mississippi State is at home, and they're coming in as a 7-point favorite. What you thinking about that, Scott?
This is going to be I think it's going to be an interesting game because, this will be Dan Mullen's return to Mississippi State after taking a head coaching job at Florida. And another thing that's going to be hard for Florida is this is their second game in a row on the road. And what worse environment can you go into besides Mississippi State with those cowbells? And all those fans are probably upset at Dan Mullen for leaving. And this is also the game that both teams lost to Kentucky. And this game, I think, the loser of this game is going to be way behind in their respective divisions, especially with Georgia and Alabama probably not going to lose a game this season, one at most for each team. So Mississippi State came off an embarrassing loss last week to Kentucky, but this week I think with their defensive line, one of the best in the SEC, best in the country, I think they're going to set the tone. I think they're going to pull this one out.
Those cowbells are surely going to be ringing this weekend loud and clear. I expect to see Mississippi State fans being loud and rambunctious this weekend, giving their team a big advantage. Florida is coming in. They've still they're underdeveloped, I think, because obviously Coach Mullen hadn't had time to get his system fully set up, so he's still got some players remaining from the previous system. So in a couple years, we'll get to see how he really does recruiting for Florida. But as of right now, with his current recruiting and Mississippi State's already current really good recruits they have there, I expect the talent difference to be pretty large in this game. Mississippi State, they had an embarrassing loss last week, like Scott said, but I expect them to bounce back this week with a good game. I think they cover the spread, and I think they beat Florida.
I think after 4 quarters, Dan Mullen's going to wish he was still in Stark Vegas. Because he's probably wishing right now that he still had Nick Fitzgerald instead of Felipe Franks. He's been very underwhelming thus far this year. But Nick Fitzgerald, I'm really high on. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think Mississippi State's going to win, and I don't think Florida will cover. I think Mississippi State's going to go up on them pretty big.
I think they're going to cover too. 7 points, they'll probably get more than that.
All right. Up next, we got one of our 2 big games with national implications. We got Ohio State at Penn State, and Ohio State's coming in at a 3.5-point favorite. So, pass it over to Nick.
Yeah, let me just get started by saying I think 3.5 is actually being generous here. I think that people are hyping this game up, especially the folks at ESPN. They obviously want to turn out viewership. So I think number 9 is a high ranking for Penn State right now. That's actually what they're currently ranked at. From the way they look versus App State, now they have gotten better. They have improved. But keep in mind, that was still only 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were struggling against a Sun Belt team. Ohio State has looked continuously strong as usual. I haven't seen a lot of weaknesses with them yet, but they haven't really played any super great teams yet either. So this should be an interesting game to at least get to evaluate Ohio State for what they are this year. But I expect Ohio State to win by at least 10.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love this Ohio State team. I know we're only in week 5, but if Alabama's gonna lose in the playoffs this year, I think it's gonna be to Ohio State. That's if they lose. But Dwayne Haskins has been playing great. He's has not missed a beat since stepping in for J.T. Barrett. He's been playing great. Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins have been great in the backfield. What's gonna hurt them though is Nick Bosa had to have surgery. And Nick Bosa is arguably their best player overall, and he's out for a while, especially going on the road to Penn State. It's gonna be a hard hole to fill for them. But I think Ohio they're looking for revenge. For 2 years ago they had that blocked field goal. Penn State took back for a touchdown, ended up winning the game. I think 3.5 is a bit generous. I think Ohio State's gonna winning on the road and covering is hard, but I think Ohio State's gonna pull that one out.
Yeah, I think a big thing to look at this game, any hope for Penn State, is Trace McSorley. He needs to come in. He needs to make some big plays, like he's done. I believe he's undefeated at home, so that's another advantage for them.
And Dwayne Haskins is undefeated as a starter so far at Ohio State.
Something's got to give.
It's going to be a battle of the quarterbacks, and with the Nick Bosa being out, their best player, I'm going to say it. I think that gives Penn State a little bit of an edge and protection, but I'm still going to go with Ohio State beating them and covering.
All right.
And then our game of the week, we got Notre Dame. My game. We got Notre Dame versus Stanford, and Notre Dame's coming in a 5-point favorite, and they're at home.
Well, this should obviously be a great game. We've got a great team here with Stanford coming in. They looked good last week. They've looked good all year long. Stanford's got talent, and they can play offense, and they can play a little bit of defense too, which is not typical for Pac-12 teams. But we'll get to really see that tested this weekend with Stanford and Notre Dame. Notre Dame is obviously a pretty physical team. They've got a competitive linemen. They've got pretty large advantage on the defensive side of the ball, I'd say, for this matchup. I'd say Notre Dame's got a lot better defensive talent than Stanford. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the deciding factor here. I think Notre Dame's going to get plenty of pressure, and they're going to be able to keep the score low for Stanford. I expect a low-scoring game, and I expect Notre Dame to pull this one out at home.
Yeah, if you like smash mouth, run the ball, football, this is right up your alley. This is gonna be a great game. Stanford coming off an emotional win against Oregon last week. They're almost down by 3 touchdowns at one point, but they had that defensive touchdown third quarter, and then they rallied to win the game. And Stanford last week, they faced Justin Herbert at Oregon. That's probably the best quarterback they're gonna face all year. If they can get past them, they can get past anybody else in their schedule. But it will hurt them. This is gonna be their second road game in a row, and Notre Dame Wimbush was out, but Ian Book has stepped in and played phenomenally last week against Wake Forest. They put up 56 last week. This is going to be a big game for both in terms of playoffs, because Notre Dame, this is probably arguably their biggest game of the year in terms of playoffs. So if they can win this game, their resume is going to look great. They don't have a conference. They don't have a conference championship. So Stanford, this is going to be probably their marquee game, maybe besides Michigan. We'll see how Michigan turns out.
What I'm really looking forward to in this game is seeing David Shaw versus Brian Kelly, the 2 coaches. They're 2 of the most underrated coaches to me, but I think they're some of the best. They're right up there with the Sabins, Harbaughs, I think. And what they do with getting recruits at academic schools, I think is really impressive. Definitely. And keep your eye on Ian Book. After he came in last week, put up big numbers. 3 rushing touchdowns, I do believe. So I'm taking Notre Dame in this game, and I'll say Stanford will cover the 5 points. It'll be a close one.
I think Stanford's going to cover, but Notre Dame's going to pull out a close one.
All right. I'm really on the fence about whether Stanford will get the spread or not. At this point, I actually think that I'm going to have Notre Dame beating the spread this week. It's only a 5-point spread. that gives you, if you're ahead by a touchdown or more, it's easily covering. So I just don't see the difference coming down to below 5 points. So I think Notre Dame will cover the spread, but I do think it will still be a close game, close competitive game. Both teams are fighting for a lot in this game, and I think that's going to show this weekend.
All right, guys, that's the Third and Goal show. Make sure you leave a like, give us a comment down below what you want to see, and thanks for watching the Third and Goal show. See you in the red zone.